Okay, hello, good morning or good afternoon, everyone, and I hope you had exciting holidays. So, we are also excited to be with you today with Translators on Air, a series of webinars hosted by BureauWorks. And this initiative is, for those of you who have not been with us before, is around the beating heart of our industry in this era of AI translators. And we invite as special guests translators having different hats like translation managers, students, linguists, professors, trainers, and we delve into the transformative era of AI, offering insights into the translator's evolving role. We are here to understand, learn, interact, build awareness and strategy, encouraging your involvement and critical thinking. So every week we have a different special guest. And before I present you our guest for today, allow me to introduce myself. I'm Veta Jean. I have 20 years of experience in this industry, having in the past different roles. And I am an MTP expert and trainer, and I'm now on my PhD on machine translation post editing with the Ionian University in Athens, Greece. So I hold the position of head of partnerships at BureauWorks, and BureauWorks is a translation technology company synonymous with innovation because we have the most innovative translation technology around. So the proof is that PWX is the winner of the Process Innovation Challenge Award at Logworld 50. And every week, our episodes sets a question. So this time, it is the following. It is about the localization. It is about UX writing, UX localization, and we have the perfect guest for it. So, is Localization Station your 2024 destination in the AI era? Today, this is dedicated to UX, and we will start to delve into the training aspects of localization and continue with training and mentorship in the AI era for 2024. We will discuss challenges and training for localization managers, visit basic concepts, and check how integrated Gen AI works here. Michal Kessel-Sivitrit is a trainer. She's a trainer and optimizes the localization workflows, giving you full control over your process. She's the owner of the Localization Station. And apologies, Michal, if I did not pronounce your name really well. The floor is yours. Tell us about you.
Thank you. It's okay about the name. I'm really used to it. It's pronounced Michal, but it's really hard. It's a hard character, I guess, for a lot of people to pronounce. So it's okay. So hi everyone, and thank you, Viveta, for having me. I'm really excited to be on this event. My name, like Viveta said, is Michal Kessel-Sivitrit, and I am a localizer, a writer, a UX content writer, and a trainer on Localization Station. And my career, I like to tell people that my career started as a translator from the very, very kind of types of basic translation. I was a student and I was trying to make some extra money. And so I did some translation of kind of articles for people, and it evolved from there. And I've been a translator for about a decade before I kind of discovered UX writing. I attended a very short workshop about what UX writing is, and I started kind of diving deeper into this. And when I started learning what UX writing is, what UX content is, I realized that the thing that I have been doing for the past years that was called software localization, software translation, UI translation, and had a lot of different names, app translation. It was really the same thing as UX writing. And I was writing or translating the same types of content, but unlike UX writers that were learning a lot of different theories and a lot of background on how to create the content, and they had a lot of UX knowledge, design knowledge, product knowledge under their belt before they started creating the content, software localizers, translators, app localizers, they were never required to get this training. They were never required to have that knowledge before they started writing content or translating content for user experiences. And so I kind of realized that there's a gap here that is really shouldn't be happening. And it explains a lot of it's the reason for the fact that a lot of localized user interfaces are not really well localized, despite the fact that companies invest millions into localization, despite the amounts of effort the companies invest in refining the processes and in software and in tech and everything else that they've been doing. And even if you're doing everything right, the fact that your translators don't have training and knowledge about creating UX content, content for user experiences, content for specifically softwares and app. The fact that they don't have this knowledge, it means that you will never be able to create really great user experiences in those target languages, even if you do everything perfectly. And so I set out to kind of try and bridge that gap, try and minimize that gap through training, through knowledge sharing. I have a localization station, which has a lot of content and articles, free content too, about creating UX content and translating UX content. And I also have the course, which is launching very soon in a couple of weeks. I'm launching and teaching translators how to create UX content in 9 in-depth lessons with assignments. So it's kind of the full package of everything you need to know to be able to create UX content and localize UX content in every language. So that's just a little bit about me. And I'm giving you the floor back, Vivetta.
And now I have thousands of questions because I
Sorry.
I approach the localization, the software localization and the UX localization from the perspective of someone who is an expert in translation technology, let's say, and from the perspective of the post editor or the translator, I would say even better. So here, yeah, of course, we know what is software localization, but I believe that in many countries and in many universities, we don't have like specific field of specialization in this domain. So it is, again, probably one of the fields where we have a gap of training in the university, which means that later on in practice, when we start our professional life, we have to learn, we have to study a lot, as you said, and that's the reason why you are here, why the courses exist, and so on. But I would like to know, for the sake of this discussion, what is the definition of UX localization? One thing. And second thing, what is the profile of someone practicing UX localization? And do we talk about two different things, like we have a UX writer and another person is the person who is dealing with the localization? Is the same person? I mean, I have so many questions, Michal. Apologies.
No worries. So first of all, you're absolutely right, because there is a very big gap that starts with university training and the training that translators get. Because even when you do have lessons on software localization, on UI translation, and things that they have the same names, the type of training that you get, the type of information that you get is very, very technical. So you learn about concatenation, and you learn about kind of sentences being split into different pieces. You learn about placeholders, and you learn about kind of changing date formats, currency formats, but you never learn about the mindset that you have to adopt to actually create UX content that is helpful, that's valuable. Because it's a very, very different mindset than the mindset that you have to adopt for marketing content, for help center content, for any other type of content, actually. You have to think in a different way, and you have to consider different things. And if translators are not taught that type of information, they're not taught that type of mindset, and they don't get to really experiment with actual content creation for user experiences and actual user experience and analyzing actual user experiences, then they are never able to get into that mindset when they come to localize the content. And so it is a big training gap, and hopefully it's something that is kind of gradually, slowly changing along with the role of the translator in the industry in general. And I do have a couple of slides just to show kind of what UX content means. So let me see how I can do the share screen. Okay. So if you can see my screen, right?
Yeah, we can see it now.
Okay, great. So these are just kind of a few examples of UX content and how UX content looks. I don't know why it keeps bumping up. So UX content is essentially any type of content that is placed in a user interface and is meant to support the experience or engage people or drive them to action within that experience. So it's meant to help people act, or it's meant to help them perform different actions within their interface or achieve different things within their interface, or it's meant to drive them to action and get them to do things. Like if you can see start searching, for example, it's meant to engage and kind of drive you to start searching for trips, start searching for places to, this is from Airbnb, so places to stay at the location of your choice. And so that's basically the main goal of UX content. And it's very, very different from other types of content in the sense that it's placed in different settings within the experience, within the flow. And you meet a lot of different short pieces of content. Unlike, for example, a Help Center article where you get a long piece of content and you have a lot of context within that content. And basically everything you have to know is already in there within that type of text. And in UX content, it's very short, and you have to kind of consider the entire flow. You have to consider the design, and you have to consider the layout, and you have to consider who your audience is and what they'll be seeing and what they know and what they will know later to be able to really create content that's going to be helpful for them. It's going to be engaging. It's going to help them achieve what they set out to achieve. And so that's just kind of a very quick example. And unfortunately, it's in English just so everybody can understand from different languages. So as you can see, I have a bit of a comparison here from UX and marketing and Help Center content. And as you can see, they have different goals because UX content is meant to guide users. It's meant to help them perform those actions in the product. Unlike marketing content, that's really meant to persuade sometimes, it's meant to sell, it's meant to inform, it's meant to reinforce brand values. And unlike Help Center content, which is really meant to help users learn about product or learn about different issues and how they can troubleshoot. So it's a very different goal. And UX content, unlike the other types of content, is usually very, very short. And it's used in different types of kind of situations, used in CTAs, headings, labels within an interface. Unlike marketing content, which is used in websites, ads, and landing pages and other kind of locations. And the decisions that you make to be able to localize that content well are based on different things. So they're based on the flow of the product, the screens that you have before, the screens that you have after. It's based on everything you know about your users and their knowledge level and their skill level. And it's based on the brand voice as well, which also kind of matches marketing, but it also has other kind of types of things you have to be based on. And so to help localizers create content for those specific use cases, for specifically for user experiences, I kind of designed that training plan that is meant to give them everything they need to know, kind of wraparound content and wraparound knowledge, everything they need to know to be able to really localize that content specifically for UX, unlike the other types of content. So they have all the intro and they learn about kind of the process. They learn about the different people that they'll have to engage with and communicate with to get the information that they need. We see, I guess, hundreds of examples for different UX content and how you can localize and how you can create content for those patterns. And we learn about tools and software and different types of tech and different types of issues that you can encounter in the process. And so it's a very kind of in-depth and I guess a comprehensive program that is meant to give people the information that they need to really be able to create content that's going to resonate with people and it's going to support them and guide them within the user experience. In the hope that eventually users all over in every language will be able to get the same quality of user experiences that we get in English. Because I don't know if you've ever tried using a product that was not natively written in your language. It is usually not as good as it is in English, in the source language, because of that gap, because of that knowledge gap. So hopefully we're going to be able to minimize that gap over time.
Mm-hmm. And what is the ideal scenario? I mean, what is the UX localizer profile? And a second question related to this is, should the UX writer and the UX localizer work hand in hand to make it successful? And yeah, let's answer these questions because there is one more.
Yeah, because they're all really great questions. So first of all, anyone can create UX content, just like anyone can localize UX content, just like anyone can create it, and anyone can design it. You just have to learn the skills to be able to do that. And so you need the obvious kind of, I guess, set of requirements that any translator would need, which is being able to just being good with your language, being good with the source language, and being able to take instructions and ask questions and be inquisitive and everything else the translators kind of need in their tool belts, whatever type of translation they do. And then you need that mindset. So you need to be able to kind of look at an interface and say, oh yeah, get into the user's shoes. Imagine you are the user now and you're standing in front of that screen. So knowing what you did before, knowing what you need to do after, knowing what you're trying to achieve and what kind of a mindset you're in at the moment. So for example, if you're trying to get a taxi, you're in a hurry. If you're trying to order food from Wolt, so you're maybe really, really hungry. So trying to kind of get that mindset that the user is in and creating content that fits all of those different details. And so if you are able to get into that mindset and you have all those other skills that a translator has, then you can create content that is much, much more supportive and helpful. And that could be anyone who's really, invested enough and passionate enough to be able to really invest that time to learn the way to do that, the way to create content.
That's very interesting because we will go again deeper and we find that the most important aspect of the profile is the mindset. And the same thing happens with the AI translation, where if the mindset is positive, let's say, and the attitude is positive towards technology, then the translator is good enough to go with it. And if the UX localizer has the mindset of feeling a sort of empathy for their audience, then again it's going to be successful. So the mindset is really important for every service in the translation and localization industry, I would say. Another question, Michal, is about the reference material, because as a translator I had the chance in the past to receive like packs of style guides, like 50 pages or 100 pages about the product, about how we localize, about all the different aspects of the DQF standard, like design, local conventions, and all this stuff. How is it possible for someone to follow these guidelines when it is a huge pack, and how technology helps with this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first of all, at the end, it is the client's responsibility to provide something that can actually be usable. So if you sent a huge pack to your translators, you expect them to go over it, especially if you're not paying them for the time to go over it, they're not going to do it. So just it's a waste of your time, it's a waste of their time, because no one is going to go over that huge pack. And if you edit and you create something that's really usable, so at the end you get something that people can actually go over and they can actually use to create the content, and it's more valuable for both ends. So you do need to invest that time as a client to edit your content. But that being said, definitely you can use technology to be able to kind of, I guess, take over some of that material. You can definitely use, when we talk about AI, so you can definitely use it to summarize and kind of get the main points out of the content, especially if you're getting, say, a huge review on the client, on the company, that maybe you don't need to know every detail of it, or especially if you're getting a complete brand guide and you just want to get the voice and tone out of it, and you just want to get the kind of things that are specific to your language out of it. So you can definitely use AI to summarize that and to get that information out of it, which is going to take you significantly less time, obviously, than reading the whole thing. So that's definitely one part of it. And also client side, they can definitely use AI to be able to create something that's much more consistent and concise and usable for translators. So I guess on both ends, this would be something that could be really helpful to, I guess, facilitate the process in a more efficient way.
This is great, and we're going to see together some other ideas how I think that we could use technology in software localization to save us time, to be more efficient, to have better quality, and we will have the chance to go over together and see if indeed it matters. So could you please elaborate on the specific challenges translators encounter in light of the AI advancements, and how do these challenges contribute to the need for specialized training, especially when it comes to UX localization?
So first of all, if you consider the way that models, translation models, and large language models were trained, they are often trained on long form content. And so both the training data that has been used to train them, but also the way that they work best, the things that they've been tested on, are long form content. Because in long form content, like we talked about, help center content, for example, you have built-in context within the paragraph. So you have context on top of the paragraph, you have context after it, and large language models can use that to estimate what's the next word is going to be in a much more efficient way, a much more efficient manner. And the problem with UX content is that, first of all, it's very, very short. And the
Mm-hmm.
context is not within the paragraph, but also it's a lot of the times not in text form. So it's really visual. And that means that
Mm-hmm.
you need to be able to take in screens and flow and kind of audience insights and voice and tone insights, which is sometimes significantly longer than you can actually input into an LLM, to be able to create content that's really valuable and helpful and supportive. And a lot of the times, a lot of the work is not really writing the words, which is something that the AI can do for you. It's more thinking about the scenario, thinking about the users, thinking how you can help them, and then making sure that the content that you create is actually valuable. And all of that kind of surrounding work, I guess, is something that AI is not yet able to fully help with, especially not in, I guess maybe in English it's a little more useful, but in a lot of other languages it's not there yet in terms of kind of the information that it's able to take in, but also output. So that's a big challenge because companies are starting to use AI for translation. They're starting to use machine translation within their flows and kind of even without a human going over and editing and proofreading the content. And for
Mm-hmm.
UX localization for UI content, it's just not possible yet. It's just not something that could be feasible. And also, that being said, it means that a lot of the work that translators are going to need to be doing, especially in UX, is going to move to the end of the flow. So if right now we are creating content for user experiences based on the source content, at the end, they're going to be using machine translation or AI or LLM to create that content. Then we're going to have to review that in context in the LQA stage to make sure that it actually fits within the flow. And on the one hand, it's much more, I want to say, much more efficient. And it really is a better way to review localized user experience content anyway, because you can see everything within the flow and you can imagine how things are going to look from one end of the flow to the other. And you can imagine what your user is going to basically go through and what they're going to feel. So in a way, it is more efficient and more helpful to review the content in that setting than it is to review the content in kind of contextless line form, where cat tools are usually showing content for translation. But on the other hand, it means that those who are going to be reviewing that content and doing that LQA and making those changes, they are going to have some form of UX knowledge and kind of understanding of user experiences. Because without that, you're not going to be able to estimate if the content would actually fit within the context. And having that knowledge is going to be even more critical and, I guess, more even required of translators or reviewers or however they're going to be called to be able to really provide value for clients. So
Mm-hmm.
it is a
I
challenge.
see. Yes, and the challenge is probably that for now, maybe one single tool is not in the position to deal with all the challenges of UX localization. Second thing, the same tool can exhaust in a way some of the challenges. Then, as you said, regarding the images, regarding the fact that we have short text and it needs more to think about the mechanism to create the short text than that you need to type it, for example. Yeah, there we need more things to happen with AI to help it a little bit. So maybe a combination of AI tools and other tools together, and of course training. So in a way, it should be like I have an AI tool to save me some time. I have a tool which is very good for localization. And in the meantime, I have all the training needed in order for myself to create the best use scenario to combine all these tools. Because in the end, there is a process, and the process may be different for each one of us to be successful, or it may be a process that is imposed by the LSP or the client that we work with, and that's it, and we need to follow. So going to the training, which is really important in order to use the different tools that we have available in this AI era, we often hear about the training gap for both trainers and translators. So how significant is this gap? And what impact does it have on the industry's adaptability to new technologies?
It's definitely significant, but it is getting minimized with time. So what happened is that I guess at the beginning, a few years ago, nobody in translation, or almost nobody in translation, even thought about UX translation as a specific subset kind of translation, or something you need to learn a specific mindset to be able to do. And not considering that even as a problem meant that nobody was trying to solve the problem. And it meant that there was such a big gap between the expectations of product companies, high-tech companies, software companies that were creating those experiences, and the LSPs that were providing translation services, that no one even tried to communicate enough to be able to explain that problem, because there was just so little trust between those two bodies, I guess, that nobody would communicate enough in a way that's open enough to be able to explain, oh, this is the problem that we have, how we can solve this. How can we find a way to get the translators maybe to know more about user experiences so that they can create content that's actually helpful and valuable and supportive? Or how can we give the translators enough context, enough information about the flow, about the mindset, about the user, so that they can actually be able to create that content in a way that's valuable and helpful. And though that gradually is being minimized, so people are starting to talk, and you did mention the process, so it's a big part of it. So the more companies, clients talk with translators, talk with LSPs about their problems, the more LSPs understand what clients need and where they're coming from, specifically in the user experience industry and the tech industry. And the more that people and product companies and tech companies understand translation and localization, then that gap is getting gradually minimized, and people are managing to communicate and explain each other and explain the problems. And that is obviously something that's really valuable and helpful. And we do see a trend where product companies, once they have enough budget, once they have enough languages and enough of a need, they're starting to hire localization managers in-house. And those localization managers kind of bring the gospel of localization, I guess, into the product company, into tech companies, so that people within the tech company that are not directly linked, you asked about UX writers and collaboration. So people who are even not directly linked to the content, but have a lot of impact on localization, like designers, like developers, they are starting to understand their impact and their importance and the role that they have within that process, because they finally have colleagues within their company that are advocating for localization and that are asking for better practices, better processes, better collaboration for localization. And so it's something that's been happening gradually. And so the gap is getting smaller, and hopefully it's going to keep getting smaller. Yeah, I hope I answered your question. I'm actually not sure.
Yeah, sure. As I am a trainer myself, and we have been working with Gala, with the MTP Training Special Interest Group, what we did for our protocol was to identify the gaps. And to identify the gaps of training, we were asking ourselves, what are the errors? So if I ask you, what are the errors, I mean, the most common errors that translators, because in the audience we have translators, and we also have project managers, localization project managers, and managers in general, who face these challenges of correcting and identifying errors every day. So what can these errors be for UX localization committed by translators, and how can they be avoided? Can you give us some examples?
Yeah, so the biggest issue is context, and it's always context. It's context even if you're not talking about UX localization. It's always context is really critical. It's especially critical in UX because you do have that kind of flow that you have to consider, and like I said, user information and voice information and other things that you need to consider when you create every little piece of content. And so a lot of the times translators don't get the context for different reasons. Maybe the client never sent it. Maybe it got lost on the way. Maybe the CAT tool does not support context. So it can have a different kind of reasons for this to happen, but they're not getting the context. And so they're creating content to the best of their ability without knowing where it's going to show up within the interface. Or they're creating content, and then the piece of content that is being used, it shows up in different places within the interface. So they created it for a specific place, but then it shows up in different places where they maybe have not localized it in a way that fits, and they are not given a chance to review it after in the LQA stage, because a lot of companies do LQA either with just someone, a QA person who is not familiar with that language, so not even a speaker of that language. Sometimes it is a speaker of that language, but they're not a translator or a language expert, but maybe someone on the team, or the customer service team, or the development team, or wherever else, who happens to be able to read that language and be familiar with it. So they say, oh, can you do a quick check and see that nothing breaks in the middle? But there are other errors that could happen that are not related to these technical things, like I said. And they're not going to be flagged unless you give a language expert who understands UX a way to review that content within context after it's being localized. So that's a big issue. And that, I think, is probably the main reason why localized content for user experiences looks the way it is, because translators, they don't have enough knowledge to even ask for that context. So it's kind of, it goes hand in hand together. And that, I guess, is the second error that I want to mention, is that translators, a lot of the times, they get a project context free or limited context and not enough information. And it doesn't have to be even visual context. It could be maybe they didn't get enough information about the company, about the voice that they're supposed to be using, about maybe other types of content that were already localized, so that they can see how it's been localized and match that same style and same voice. So they're not getting that information. And instead of asking for it, they're maybe too shy to ask for it. They're maybe worried that it's going to make them look bad. It's going to make the project manager angry. Maybe the project manager will not have time to, because the deadline is so quick and timing is so tight that they're worried that they're not going to have time to even finish the project if they ask for more information. So they don't ask for it. And then nobody knows that there's a problem, because they've never mentioned that there's going to be a problem, because they don't feel empowered enough, confident enough, or I guess trusted enough to raise that issue as a concern. And so that also creates kind of a loop of problems, because once they don't feel trusted enough or empowered enough, then that creates kind of rolling issues that will never be fixed, because no one even knows that they're happening, because the language expert, who's the only person who can actually flag those issues, never sees the content after it's done being localized. So they never see it in context, I guess, within the app. So those are kind of the main two issues that I think are happening right now in UX localization.
And it is an objective fact, meaning that content is content. If you don't have content, you don't have the company of your words. You cannot understand where it is. You don't have extra textual information, so you cannot translate. But the other thing is, when I was a project manager and I was assigning, for example, a project to a translator who was an expert, in the end, two things could happen. One would be the translator to run away when they would be about to see the text and see the complexity of it. And the second thing would be to have all the style guides and the information and everything. But in the end, it was not an issue of content, context, and so on. It was an issue of lack of attention to detail and lack of compliance with the instructions, which probably, I don't know if you agree, brings us back to something that it is about trainability and not about the expertise, meaning if they are willing to learn, if they have the intention to learn, to improve their expertise, and to deliver something that is going to be up to standards.
Yeah, well, first of all, and I see that not just with translators, but any role, I guess, that I talk to, when you're aware that you're supposed to know this and why you're supposed to know this and what kind of impact it has, like, say, a voice and tone, for example. So when you're aware of how important the voice and tone is for UX content, and you know the impact it has, and you see examples of different voices and how they impact the content, then all of a sudden you're more willing to be able to invest the time to actually learn about it. And a lot of the times right now, when I know about voice and tone, so if I start writing content without knowing the company voice and tone, it feels like I'm missing something. So I'm having trouble writing content without going and looking for that information. So before I knew about voice and tone, before I knew what it was, it wouldn't have bothered me. So I would just write content in the way that I thought would be right, and I didn't give it a second thought because I didn't even know that I was supposed to give it a second thought, or that it could have been different because I didn't even have that knowledge. So that's part of it, I think. And also, I do have to say that a lot of the times translators are given a huge amount of context, a lot of it not relevant for their work as UX localizers. And they're just expected to go over the entire thing and kind of, I guess, squeeze out of it something that's going to be useful for them as they work. And again, they don't have the knowledge to do it. They don't have the time to do it. They're not paid to do it. And so at the end, clients come in and they're kind of, I guess, complain about why this is happening, why translators are not following the guidelines that they provided. But if you send a 30-page document about your company and your goals and your values and your mission, and you send that to translators and you expect them to read it when you pay them 5 cents a word to translate the content, then you have nothing to complain about because you're not even considering those people who are actually creating content and considering their time and considering the work that they have to put in to read that 30-page document that is not even relevant to the work that they'll be doing. So that's also part of it. And also, a lot of the times LSPs replace translators for every role because they have very tight deadlines. So they give this to the kind of person who confirms the project the fastest. And so you don't have the time to really get to know a brand and really get to know the product. So I have products that I've been working with for 3, 4, or 5 years, and I know them so well that sometimes when they have a question, they come to me to ask me about kind of different sections of the product, different terminologies that maybe that we've been using. And that could never happen if you keep replacing your translators. And if you work with the same translators, you're going to get people who have that knowledge because over time they're going to learn it, even if you don't force them to read the 30-page document. Because every little project, they learn more and more and more when you invest in those people and you kind of give them a sense that they are important to the company, important to the process. And you also keep working with them so they consider you a valued client as well. So you obviously get better results, better content, and you get people who are more knowledgeable about the brand that you're trying to localize.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's completely about ethics and about investing in people and in their self-development. So yeah, thank you so much for this, Michal. And now let's explore the innovative side. So you evaluated yourself, BWX, our tool, and you found some interesting points for the translation management. So I can share with the audience my screen, and maybe you would like to point out some of the interesting points that you found while exploring the interface.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen here. Mm-hmm. Okay, so here we have the interface. Okay, because every time that I'm showing the interface, people check the cost and not the interface. It's something fake, okay? It has nothing to do with the reality, so don't focus on the prices. Okay, so we see the interface, and let me know if you have anything to share about the TMS, the management system here.
Yeah, because a lot of my clients, what happens is with UX localization, a lot of the times is that companies start out very small. They have a product, they create it sometimes in English or in maybe 2 languages, and then they start adding clients, and someone comes to them from, I know, some sort of Spanish-speaking country, and they say, "Oh yeah, I want the interface in Spanish." Then someone comes and say, "Oh, we have to have it in French. Oh, we have to have it in German," and they start adding languages, but they're still using that same old flow that they've been using before. So they're still maybe copying things from Figma to some sort of Excel sheet and sending that to translators, or maybe using some sort of kind of low-key content management system so that they can manage the different languages, but they're getting lost with the cost of it. They're getting lost with the amount of content that they have to localize. They're getting lost with consistency and with kind of having to sync everything between the different languages, between the different interfaces and tools that they're using. And so what happens is that these companies start to look for a solution, and they Google localization management software, and they get to the different people different companies on the market, and a lot of the times they close the tab and they move on and they get back to their old processes because it's too complex for them. And it's so complex, it's so advanced that they're not even able to find kind of their arms and legs, I guess, within it, because up until now all they did was copy paste content from, I don't know, somewhere. A lot of the times it's not even someone who's dealing with the content in terms of writing it. So sometimes it's a designer, sometimes it's a product manager, it's someone within the company, a project manager. And so they're not even in charge of the content, of creating the content. And they're just in charge of kind of managing localization, but they're not a localization manager. And so they get lost and they don't want to use any of the really complex features and products out there. And so what I really liked about BWX was how simple it is to just create a very simple flow and keep track of it, and keep track of the different languages that you're doing, and keep track of the different files that you are using, and budgets and progress and everything else just within that interface in a way that's very, very, I guess, visual and simple to use. And I think for those mid-level companies who are not yet in that really big kind of 20 languages, really continuous localization phase, but they're in a very kind of preliminary phase where they're still trying to find their way, I think that could be immensely valuable for them and very, very helpful to have that really visualized kind of step-by-step process of localizing the product.
So if I try to show something here, it would be how we build a project in BWX. So we can just go to new project, and the first thing that we're going to do, I'm going to use one of your files, maybe the Spanish one. I don't know if it's going to work though. Let me see, because one of the files needs to have only source text. So yeah, this has more than the source text. So let me delete this probably. Okay, real-time things. So I'm going to add these drag files. Let me do this. Okay, apologies. So here it is. We drag the file, drag, drop, and then we continue. Second step, we need to have an organizational unit because BWX works with organizational units, meaning that you have the opportunity to give different permissions to the different units of one organization, or you can set up your clients as organizational units, and you have the freedom to work with organizational units the way you want. So here we can use the default, we can add the contact person. Okay, this is me. Then the important thing is to have like demo UX, for example, the project reference name. We add English, let's say, and we have a target language, like I think it was Spanish. So let's go Spanish, Spain. And then you have the translation memory, the glossary, the price list, if it's needed, and then you start creating the project. So here you can see that you can add all the workflow, all the steps of the workflow that you would like to have. For example, I only keep translation, and here you are, you create your project, and based on the price list that you have created, then this is updated, is automatically updated. So your project is here, and of course you proceed with the assignment. And this is how it's time. For those of you who have been with me before in these episodes, this is how we reach the editor. So now I'm going to show you something interesting. Normally we have demos, let's say, or examples, I would say better, of texts which are really relevant in terms of translation with AI for BWX. But this time I'm going to show you something challenging because we are here with Michal. So what I did is to import the Excel file that Michal sent me, and to see what I'm going to have in order to have an interesting discussion with her. So Michal told me, because I'm always honest with the audience, her experience with the translation management system was excellent. Her experience with the UX localization was moderate, I would say. And the reason is that because we have all these, I would call them strings where we have like a short sentences for localization, so you don't have any context. So what we get here is, translation without context. How could this work? You should also have a reference to another document and so on. So my suggestion, Michal, here for this use case would be that the only way to make this happen would be to add all the sentences, let's say all the segments of the file as a glossary, meaning expressions and all this stuff, and have them ready for a second version of it, because we know that in the localization, software localization, we have the first version, another version, and so on. So if the first time we have everything placed like a glossary, then the system, because of the deep learning that it has, it's going to learn with us. And then for the next version, it's going to be like happening automatically, having taken into account all the information coming from the extra effort we had to refer to images, to instructions, and so on. So this is one way to combine AI with text, which is for software localization. And of course, as usual, you can have features like warnings, translation smells, you can have the automatic proofreading, you can have fixing tags, although I don't know, if you have an Excel file, probably you will not have this case, but for other kind of text, we may have it. So here you see how it worked here. And of course, you have the repetitions that, okay, they're going to come correctly and so on. So what is your opinion, Michal, about software localization and the AI tools?
So definitely, I have tried it before, and I can definitely say that training AI to create better UX content is possible. And the more good UX content that you feed the AI, the better the end results are going to be when you give it other tasks afterwards that are dedicated to UX content. Because it is a specific type of writing. Because each string is a standalone, you have to phrase it in a different way than you would have if it's a sentence in a paragraph. But if you do give the AI a lot of examples of well-written UX content in that specific language, then it is going to be able to provide better content. So hopefully, if companies do decide to go this way, they can definitely improve the results that they're going to get over time with their UX content at the end. And also, yeah, I think it would be a great idea to use for glossaries and for kind of added content that you would have to create that's maybe a little bit longer, and just to manage the entire translation flow could also be really valuable for companies.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And I was even thinking, because I had the training myself to a team of translators, that if, for example, the reviewer is training the system, the AI, then the translators are going to learn from the style of the reviewer, because it's going to be replicated and the results are going to be even better. So I believe that the magic thing with this is that the more data you feed it, the better it learns, and the better are going to be the results out of it. It needs training. We need training. The system needs training for the whole process to improve over the time. And now that we saw how it works here, because my opinion is that every tool has different processes to be efficient. So
Yeah.
this is one use case. The other use case would be completely the opposite, like one of the videos I shared for the holidays with the audience. So I had an EU text, and here we see that the case is completely different. So here we can have all the features. So we can have the proofreading, we can have these magic fixing tags here, for example, if my network goes well, because everything is too heavy here. So if I have fixed tags here, it's going to correct the tags, place them in their position, so it matters. And if there is an error, like here, then the translation smells, it's going to bring a warning about the specific error, or we can have an alternative suggestion, like, let's see this one, where we will receive if there is any, because here it says the translation provided is accurate and does not require any improvement. So this is one of the cases. Other than that, it could be like here, it's looking for warnings. It has no warnings here. So it's a good translation. So you see that here, it's a great help all in all. And we can do everything in this secure environment without going to the chat GPT. What I recently noticed is that we sometimes we say something wrong, like we say if a text type is relevant for machine translation, while we should say if the machine translation engine is trained to be relevant for a specific text type. This is important. It is a subtle difference, but it is important because so far we're not in the beginning. We are going towards the end, meaning that we have improved a lot. We have trained engines. So it matters a lot the way that the engine is trained and not so much the text type. So this was a little bit about BWX and how we go around it and UX localization. At this point, I will probably share with you some interesting stuff. So let me go with my screen. So here I have some slides and some announcements. So one thing, and I have for your convenience, these QR codes is that BureauWorks is sponsoring the pre-conference day of ELIA Together. So we're going to be at ELIA Together this February, and I'm going to run a workshop, how to efficiently post edit with BWX generative AI translation technology. And I believe that Michal really understands the case because it is not everything about the tool. It is also about the training and how we use a specific tool to make its use efficient. So if you, thank you. So maybe you can scan this if you are interested. If you are going to be there, it's going to be very interesting and it's hands-on, meaning that you will have your laptops and I'm going to be your trainer or teacher showing you how to work with it. Then we have the BWX hands-on experiment. There is a relevant post on LinkedIn, and it is about a team of people who will be have a hands-on experience on how to use what we see now as a demo, or you have seen with Gabriel, our CEO, as a demo. You will be able to have a text and work with me in parallel, live, a team of 7, to see how you can build your project and start post-editing in BWX. Maybe you know about the A Translation Lab, but the important thing is that if you want to have your own trial for your own text type, then you can sign up for your 14-day free trial. And with this QR code, you can have 30% off for the 3 months. So after that, you can share your experience with me and let me know if it works for you or if you have some observations, some remarks, something to share. I will be happy to know about it, not only me, but the whole team at BureauWorks. We have the partnerships program. So if someone in the audience is from a university and they would be interested in a demo for the students, then this is something that I can provide it for you. And last, I show you all the webinars. Michal, I can share it with you that we had so far. This is the last webinar for 2023. And Michal was my last and best guest, I would say. As we say in Greek, actually, it's not something, word by word. Yeah, and these are all the guests that we had, and I'm going to have a special post about all the guests that were here, and a big thank you to all of them for their contributions, for educating the audience. We will have more episodes in 2024, and more. We will start with mentorship, training, in different areas of the translation localization. We want to support translators, to motivate them to have lifelong learning and training. And at this point, Michal, I would like you to end the webinar with your invite, meaning what you can share with the audience. Which course do you suggest? Where should they be trained in? And what is your message for 2024?
Absolutely. So first of all, I've been talking a lot about the course that I've been doing that's been opening, like I said, in 2 weeks. But even if you're not taking the course, if you're doing software localization, UX localization, UI localization, there is a lot of information online, even specifically on UX writing and not UX localization. There's a lot you can learn from it. There's also a mini course that is free on the Localization Station website. So you can go and sign up. You get 7 emails for free with lessons on UX localization. So feel free to do that if you want. You don't have to, you're not committing to anything. You don't have to pay for anything. Just go and do the mini course. Like I said, it's not paid. And I guess this would be also my message for 2024, which is keep learning, keep improving. We've talked a lot about technology in this over this hour. And I get that it sometimes can seem frightening to people who's maybe feeling like technology is taking over their jobs and pushing them aside and pushing them out. If you keep learning, if you keep improving, if you keep kind of trying to not even trying, but if you keep reading and understanding how things are going and where things are going, you are always going to have a role and a place in localization. So just keep doing that. Stay curious, keep learning, keep trying to understand kind of what interests you and where things are going, and you'll be just fine. And 2024 is hopefully going to be a great year for everybody. I'm really hoping.
I think these words should be our last destination and definite destination for 2024. Thank you so much, Michal, for your inspiring words. We really need this in the industry. And thank you for being with us. I wish you and all of us and to the audience success, health, happiness for the new year. And let's all be united together, embrace new things, test new things, and go ahead with AI in our hands, under our control. So thank you very much for being with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good year.